Welcome to the Brews with Bros show, where we explore the art of marketing and selling in your local community. We bring in high-performing guests who share their methods of generating sales and new leads using network groups, social media, and Web 3.0. Whether you're a small business owner or in sales, this show is for you. So grab a brew and join us as we learn from the best in the biz. Cheers!
3, 2, 1. All right, everybody, welcome to the Brews with Bros podcast. My name is Ty Keller. I'm with Cross Country Mortgage. I'm here with my cohort, Dimitri Toplinski with Alpha CIS. And we've got a special guest today, Lou Samara. Lou, I met you a few weeks ago. I'm excited about some of the things that you have to share with us today, just about sales, networking, being authentic. You've got a great story, a great career, and found yourself in more of a business development role and kind of self-employed after a long career in law enforcement. So wanted to have you on the show today just to kind of talk about some of the methods that you have for generating business development. A lot of what we've talked about on our podcast so far has been about technology. But today I kind of want to get back to the basics of what it means to be authentic, to be a salesperson. And so with that, give us a little background on yourself. I don't know if that's a great intro, but tell us about where you came from and what you're about, my friend.
Great. That's great. Thanks, Ty, and thanks, Dimitri. It's a pleasure to be with you, an honor. And enjoyed meeting you guys and having a lot of fun getting to know you. I'll just jump right in. So grew up fixing equipment, and for most of you, you don't know typewriters, but I fixed typewriters as a kid, and I really hated it, but got good at it, right? And I installed car stereos. And then for a couple of years, I went to a technical school and got a diploma and started working in the pharmaceutical industry and just couldn't handle corporate. And I always wanted to be a cop, so I went and became a cop, and that was fun. Within a few years, I became a training officer and a SWAT officer. One of my favorite jobs as being a cop is being on a tactical team. It's just being a SWAT operator is just it was my passion as a police officer, that training. And but after being married and having a kid and looking at life, I was introduced to a business model and thought, how am I going to pay for this son of mine? And how am I going to, all these, I was working in a very wealthy area in Colorado, and I'm searching homes that are 10 and 12,000 square feet. And I started thinking, are these guys selling drugs? How do they make this kind of money? I didn't know how to think, And so it was just time to move on. So after 12 years of a career in law enforcement, I left, and I went through a real rough time trying to figure out, what am I going to do? I even thought at the time, this was a few years ago when Radio Shack was still in existence, I thought, well, I could be a salesman at Radio Shack. And I thought, wait a minute, come on. I have all these skills, and I was learning part-time. I was learning some business. And so I got back into pharma and worked for one company. Within a couple of years, I got I doubled my income by going to a regional management position. And, along the way on the side, I was listening to audios for business and self-improvement and self-development. And I just started growing. And so that as a regional manager, I was doing good and having a little trouble still because it was a real corporate tight-knit structure and I was the outsider coming in. And but I was doing all right. And Monday morning, in October that year, company sold. And the Monday morning of Thanksgiving week that year, they had a special meeting to come up to help me grow my region. And they showed up with a new manager, which was unplanned, and they fired me. So that was pretty devastating to me. I'd never been fired, never had a problem with that. And so I did the next best thing is get out and start my own company. And I called a friend of mine who managed a lab, and he called me in. He said, hey, can you fix this equipment? And I said, sure, I can fix it. What is it? That's how I started my business. And then all that time, I was going through a lot of self-development stuff. I'm going to just touch on this here so people get a little background. I was going through a divorce 2 years after I started my business, which lasted 4 years, raising a son, co-parenting, running that company, and I was having nightmares and got help and found out that I had no clue. You could have known this before, but I didn't know that I had a problem as a kid. I was abused by an uncle, sexually abused for several years. And so all of that came out right in the beginning of my company. And I'm like, oh man, what am I supposed to do? But I just kept going.
Wow.
And I just kept going. I worked relentlessly. I worked on my own self, and I worked on the business. And so fast forward 6 years after the divorce, I met my bride. She was a VP at L'Oreal in Manhattan. She's done really well in her career. And I was growing my company. And about 4 years after we met, we got married within a year of meeting. And then 4 years after we met, I sold my company to a public company. So it was like a lot going on in those 12 years time, man. So that's my background. I'm still active in law enforcement. I'm still, I have another company now. We're growing that here. We live in Georgia, and love it. It's been to me, business is a great way to serve others, but it's also a challenge, and it's a lot of fun.
Lou is basically a certified badass. Like when we're growing up to be kids, we're like, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's never like, Lou was like, yeah, SWAT officer. He actually did it.
Yeah. That's kind of funny because you're right, Dimitri. It's like we all think, what do we want to do? And I was like, oh, could I ever do that? And then when it happens, you're like, I'm doing it, man. I'm doing it. It's kind of fun. Yeah.
That is wild. So I know, Lou, you have a lot of experience with, sales. You have a lot of the way you have a whole approach to it, right? And approach to the networking too. So I just kind of wanted to pick your brain a little bit about that. So, oftentimes we actually met at the networking group, right? The Brews with Bros. Right. That was the first time that we kind of started up a chat. And you were very pleasant. I mean, you're smiling, like it was easy to approach you. It wasn't anything, But how do people who don't have that about them, right? Like, how would they go about developing those kind of skills? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. And I'm glad you brought that up because the smile for me was really hard. I was a SWAT cop and a training cop, and I was supposed to be tough. Well, when you're tough, you don't smile. That's what I thought, right? I mean, I'm not going, ooh, this is fun. You're under arrest. Let's go. It's serious business. And so when I left the police department, like I said, before it was a sheriff's office, it was tough. And what I did, I was reading books. And one of the books I read is How to Win Friends and Influence People. And that book is a classic. It's been updated by Dale Carnegie's family for the digital age. I recommend it to everybody. In that book is a chapter on smiling. I'm not kidding you. I would practice looking in the mirror and smiling so I didn't look phony. I would, and then it took me a long time. And people joke about it. And I say, look, and I went to a dentist one time and he says, hey, you need a crown. And he says, do you want gold or silver or whatever color? And I said, well, why does it matter? I said, no one will ever see it. And now everybody sees it. And last year at Christmas, my 6-year-old nephew said, Uncle Lou, why do you have a gold tooth? And I was like, wow. I was joking. I said, I'm a pirate, but I had to teach myself to smile. And that smile, makes you approachable. And once you're approachable, you can start a conversation. So that's a basic step for me, is smiling, making eye contact. I still shake hands. It just depends on the situation, but I want to be that person. I'm just me, Mm-hmm. So people call it genuine or authentic, but I'm me. I love people. Now, some people I don't, right? But for the most part, humanity, I love, that we're together. And so it's important that people know there are basics to this. It's not about just, hey, how are you? Hit and run, which is how I used to do business, Oh, can you help me? No, see ya. No, see ya. Where's the one that can help me? It's the other way around. I had to flip that, or how can I help you? Well, how I can help you, first of all, is starting to be approachable. Because if I look like a cop all the time, people think this guy's going to take me out, man, So that's how I started. And then again, my system of talking to people is very kind of old school, but it's still good today. How I learned was a method called FORM, FORM. And it's talk to people about their family, talk to people about their occupation, talk to people about recreation, and then talk to people about your message, right? And some people say money or message, but I say message. Now, um, typically when I meet people, especially in a regional area, hey, do you live around here? That's just an easy thing to say, hi, how are you? Where do you live? You live nearby? And then you just roll the ball. It takes practice and it takes a little time to develop to be comfortable in your own skin doing those things if you don't do it.
That's yeah, that's what's interesting about that, right? Is I personally will, speak from my experiences. I was, computer nerd like that is I was behind the screen all the time. I
Right.
didn't go out and meet people. And so when I started doing it, at first it was kind of, it was weird to me. It took a little bit of getting used to just walking up to somebody and being like, "Hey, how are you?" Um, I know Ty has been in kind of a sales position where that was pretty normal for him, going up to people. But yeah, personally for me, that was a challenge that I had to kind of go through and figure out how I was going to handle it. What are what are some of the things that people can kind of do to practice? Not everybody can just come in and just do that. Is there? I know you talked about your framework, right, on how you approach people.
Mhm.
What are is there any way that people could practice this, and how can they just is this something that you just have to get better with practice, or is this what's the secret to that?
Good question. And by the way, when I met you, to me, you were warm and inviting. But see, we're all different. I'm real outgoing and driven. I am like 100 mile an hour, get out of my way type personality. And I'm outgoing and I'm people oriented. You're more reserved and more task oriented, right? So there's different pieces in the people puzzle. And so what I recommend people also to do is learn their personality type. Are you outgoing or reserved, people oriented or task oriented? Very simple. And then if you know that, you use that strength, because the people that I work with, for me, I run hard and then I crash. I run hard and I crash, and so when you're a little more um, stable and steady, it's easier. So people feel that warmth from people that are a little more reserved because they don't feel like they're being sold to. So I had to really work on that. How do people practice? That's a great question. Um, there's thousands of ways. What I recommend is they start at home. And if they're married, start with their spouse and say, hey, look, I need your help. I'm going to do this. It'll improve your marriage because if you want to connect with your spouse, why not? But I practice looking in the mirror. I was single at the time. I was newly divorced. So I was looking in the mirror and I just met people wherever I was, at the grocery store. Hey, how are you today? And sometimes people are like, I was in New Jersey when this happened. So you can imagine people are a little crusty
Hmm.
there, and they're in a hurry. They're just in a hurry. And so they don't have time for pleasantries. The other thing is they could join a networking group like Brews with Bros. I think it's great. You guys, Ty and Dimitri, are very welcoming. Your people are all very welcoming. The guys and gals I met there were fun and engaging. And I was like, wow, I felt welcome, right? As a new outsider. Join a networking group, also Toastmasters, also Chamber of Commerce, also Rotary Club, anything to be involved around the people. If you go to a church, you can join get involved in a small group or some type of group there. Um, be a greeter at your church. I mean, I did that. People,
Hmm.
they were like, "Oh, you need to be a greeter." I'm like, I don't really want to be a greeter. Come on, I own this company. I'm a hot shot. Why do I want to be a greeter, right? But
Hmm.
I did it because
Well,
it got me out of my comfort zone.
I got to add something to your what you've said, because it works both ways with your form approach. Kind of going back to, if that for a second, if I may,
Yeah.
in terms of practicing and all that sort of thing, this is one thing to nail down: family, occupation, recreation, and message. You got to know that that is a very common networking mnemonic that people use to have conversations with people. I've heard it in terms of Ford, where instead of message, it's dreams. But if you are on your heels, that's something to fall back to. But how important would you say it is to have those things kind of nailed down as just a thing to talk about for yourself. You know, other people are going to ask you those types of questions. So, you know, you got to get your story down. And Lou, you've got your story down, man. You tell it, it reads like the intro to a good book. Like, and you've written a book before, so you are a good storyteller. But I don't know, how important do you think it is for people to have kind of their message kind of nailed down in terms of networking? Softball question, I know, but
No, great question, Ty, because it took me a long time to do that so it's very important, and it's very important to be able to craft that so it's short enough that people want to know more, and succinct enough, and kind of unemotional, right? Like I was really angry the day I got fired, and for many years I was like, man, I want to, but people don't want to hear that when I'm introducing myself to them at a networking event, or let's say a trade show or a business presentation or something, a chamber of commerce meeting. They just, I want to give them the highlights, the 30,000 foot view, basically. And it's taken me a long time. I mean, it didn't just happen. Over the past 3 years, I really refined it, frankly, because I've been doing more of this type of speaking and meeting, and I got to be quicker and more succinct, because that story it is a book. Do you know what I mean? So who wants to stand there and listen to a guy weighing on about it, or a gal. So you're right. That's a really key point. Just write it down. What I do, I mean, look, I wrote my notes for the show on good old paper, right? So write it down and rehearse it a little. Do it in your own spare time. You could do it into your phone, have your camera on and look at yourself. Or you could do it in the mirror. But that's a good point, and it's really important to know it. And not everybody's as fast as me, and they don't have to be, right? Dimitri, you're a little more evenly paced, and you could say your story just the way you would say it. Just make it flow so that you can make it about the story and not about you. Does that make sense?
Honestly, I'm still struggling with like the 30-second elevator spiel. Like I've done it plenty of times, but I'm still like, every time I'm like, it's toss up what I'm gonna say, like what's gonna come out of my mouth that time. Like I don't have it rehearsed.
That's good. And here's a secret to that. This is a good secret. It doesn't have to be the same every time. Mine never is, right? Because then it does sound rehearsed, but no key points. Like, Ty, that was a great point. How do you get that? So, you can ask me what I do, and I can tell you 40 things, right? I have a marketing company. I'm on the board of another company. I do this. I do consulting, right? So, as my business partner says, he said, read the room. So kind of know your audience, know where you're at, and just be aware. If you're in the Brews with Bros networking event, then you're more relaxed. It's your event, and you could be a little more chill. But if you're at a chamber meeting where you got commissioners coming in, which we had one a couple of weeks ago, and the commissioners were there, and they're people too. I know one of the local commissioners in Gwinnett County. I met him at a chamber meeting. I said, let's have coffee. We had lunch. I saw him at the meeting last week. He said, hey, Lou, how you doing? I said, hey, man, how you doing? I don't want to use his name, but how's your son doing? Oh, man, he just turned 3. People want to know. Here's the bottom line. People want to know that you care about them. So when I meet somebody, here's another key. If I get their name and number in my phone, I make notes about them, where I met them, in the notes section. Okay, I met Dimitri. He's got a son. He's running this group, things like that. So when I met that commissioner, married commissioner, he's working in property management, and he had a 2-year-old son. That was enough to help when I see him. Hey, how's your son doing? You remembered I had a son. That means I care about him, and I do. And I love kids, and I love, I have a son, and, I think people's kids are their pride sometimes, right? More important than their business. And if they don't have kids, that's okay. How's your business, or how's your wife doing, or you find things out when you ask questions, and that's another part of this connection is the form part that we talked about, Ty, asking questions about them. And then recording that in your brain as it comes in. And then when you walk away, you make a quick note. Does that help?
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
This is what we're
I love
joking
it.
about in the pre-interview questions. Remember, we were like, "Well, how do you fake authenticity? Like, if you
Yeah,
just don't
right.
care about somebody, but you
Right.
really just have to make that sale."
Yeah. So
Well,
here's what I think was said. Hopefully, I don't know. Hopefully, none of us said that, but it's kind of like you've got people that when they're starting in networking, they struggle with feeling authentic because they're stepping outside of their comfort zone. And I think I said it by definition. Authenticity is not something that you can fake. You're either authentically uninteresting or authentically interesting. And one way to come off interesting is to be genuinely interested in other people. And I think that takes a lot of the pressure off. And I think that's probably Lou's style, is what I'm gathering, is you're just genuinely interested in other people. And speaking from personal experience, if you're more concerned about other people than what people think of you, then man, it certainly takes the pressure off in networking situations that you've never been in, because you know your mode, you know your form, you've got the answers to that down, you know what your message is, you care about people, and so you're there to meet more people. And people aren't a means to an end, I think. And but if you treat people like that, if you think about people like that, especially if you're single-minded, if you're left-brained, and if you're one-track minded and you're in business development, you know it needs to be done. You've gamified this for yourself. You're making calls. You know what you have to do to succeed. But on the flip side of that, this is a people business, whatever it is. You've got to build
right.
relationships. So, sometimes it'd be nice if we were just robots, and we could just say,
Yeah.
I have this service, and do you want this? Yes or no? It doesn't work like that.
Right.
So enjoy it and embrace it.
And
Right. And Ty, I can tell you've studied and read a lot and practiced, because you're that. You're on that journey and doing those things. So you're doing great, man. And good points on that. You're right. You cannot fake authenticity, and you're right. Also, when you think of someone else, plus people are so much more interesting than me, right? I mean, that's kind of an ego thing, and that's why the cop thing was hard to shift from, because I had to protect myself and not get drawn into people's stories. If you're going in a door with a guy with an AK-47 shooting at his girlfriend and his son, I don't really care. He needs to stop,
Yeah.
and whatever we had to do to stop him, but I'm not doing that anymore, right? And that's
Hmm.
for that specific thing. But in the general public and out in life, people are interesting. And when you get to really like them, I have a business partner who owns the fourth largest consulting company in the country, business and management consulting. And he's founded this thing. It's worth gobs of money. And he's so down to earth, and he's so reserved. He says he would rather have root canal than network. I'm like, how did you build such a big company? He goes, I hired the right people. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But I have learned to love it, because I'm also learning. I'm learning about, I learned about this podcast, and I learned about what you both do for a living. And boy, and now if I need your service, or if I know somebody who needs your service, I love connecting people, because it makes me feel good to say, oh, this guy's he's an investor and he can't get, funds, and I'm going to send him to Ty, and Ty and him do a deal. I go, hey, where's my VIG? No, I say, hey, I feel good. I say, man, that made me feel good to help my buddy. Do you know what I mean? So when you
Yeah.
learn, networking is really about solving the need of either your customer or your friends or or yourself. You do have to, produce income, right?
Hmm.
you
So
know what's interesting about that is when I actually first started networking, even I, because I told myself, I was like, all right, if I'm gonna go in there, I'm gonna try and just, I'm not gonna sell anything that I do to anybody there. All I'm gonna do is just go in there with a mindset of like, I'm just gonna make friends. And then, if they like me enough, then they maybe will refer somebody over to my way, or, if not, then it is what it
that's
is.
right.
But that was
And
kind of the mindset that I went with it.
that's great, because remember, the timing has to be right too on the sales cycle, right? If we talk, sales cycles and things, everybody's sales cycle is different. And it's kind of like this whole thing. You got to meet the person who wants the mortgage, who needs it today or tomorrow or this month, while you're meeting them, because they may not. but you don't know who they know, right? So it's a whole, I don't need it right now, So, but I have here in my brain that I could help, or Dimitri, if you need, for your clients or something like that. And I hope it comes back to me for when I need something, or somebody finds something where, hey, Lou, Lou has this product, and I think you should call Lou. Something like that, right? It's a timing thing. And the other thing I wanted to bring up that we talked about on the pre-show was transactional versus relational. We have become a little bit transactional. Look, everybody uses social media. I have mostly Instagram and LinkedIn, because I just don't have time for Facebook and Twitter and all the other rest. So I like Instagram and Facebook for me, for my channels. I'm sorry, Instagram and LinkedIn. And but I make the video, but I'm like, am I posting this right? Just because I don't do it all the time, I don't know if I'm adding value to people or not, right? I want to add value. I might be inspirational for a guy my age, still fit in the gym, doing crazy things. That's fun. But what I've seen, and a lot of my colleagues, and we all talk about this, is business is relational. And when we get out of the transactional mode, look, we've all been in a fast food restaurant where the high school kid, that's a great model. There are some models that they're really good at, and some models where they're not. And I don't want to get into names, but you'll know when you go into one fast food restaurant versus another, and one's a chicken one and one's a beef one, right? So just figure that out. You'll see
you
the
connect
difference.
The dots.
You connect the dots, right? But I don't like being transacted. I'm like, I don't want to come back. No matter where I am, just say hi to me. I'm a person. I'm always saying hi to people. And how's your day? And they're okay, next. And I'm like, oh man, this is, it shouldn't be hard. We're
Like,
people.
hopefully this hamburger doesn't suck.
Right. So my point is, for us in business, is to remember, at the end of the day, we want to close the sale. We want to make the money. But my clients in the pharmaceutical industry in New Jersey and Philly and that area, they were my friends. I was their friend. And they knew. I had cell phone numbers for people from the past, 20 years. I know, hey, how's your son? Did he graduate yet? Did he get married? I mean, we followed each other. And it's not every day. But they knew I cared about them and their family. And when I walked into a customer, we'd sit and talk for 10, 15, sometimes 30 minutes about their family and what's going on and how's your son. And they like that because you're real, and they don't feel like there's a transaction. Now, there is a transaction, and it is profitable, and it does take, for me, it had contracts and responsibilities and payment terms. But when you build that trust, right, it's about building trust. It starts with the relationship and being real yourself, and they know this guy's authentic. He's okay, or whatever word you want to use.
Yeah.
I like him. He doesn't mind talking about his family during a business meeting. He doesn't mind talking about his, okay, he went through this issue as a kid, or, because the other way I tried, and I was a robot. I had to be perfect, and and the tie had to be right, and the presentation had to be right, and the PowerPoint or the video. And at the end of the day, it didn't endear anybody to me. It looked good. They were like, "Wow, great PowerPoint. I don't like you, but the PowerPoint was good."
So we know what it feels like to be transacted at the chicken place versus the hamburger place. The chicken place, we're not, right? We know where that is. But in a networking event, here's how I think you can know you're being transacted. Have you guys ever had a situation where you're talking to someone, they find out what you do, and then you're not like a target person for them to talk to? They're really about trying to find this one person, and so you can't really connect with that person. They're not interested for whatever reason. It's because they don't see you as somebody who can, as a potential client. They're not looking at you as, a person and just getting to know you. It doesn't matter if either of you can do anything for each other in that moment or in the future, but you just can tell that some people are specifically looking. I used to go to a lot of conventions and a lot of things for work, and if sometimes people just have blinders on to the rest of the world because they're looking for that one lead, or they're looking for that one person who may need their services, and that isn't networking at all. That's hunting, I guess. You're hunting for that perfect client, but networking is, hey, here's what I do. What do you do? And if you got enough people in your life that add value in different ways, they know plenty of people who may need what you need. You still need to have good relationships and be authentic with people. Is that
Right.
fair?
Yeah, I agree.
Anna?
I mean, yeah. No, I'm with you. And I started that way, so I'm admitting it. I started like, you
Yeah,
can help
I'm
me, you can
guilty.
help me, get out of my way. I'm guilty. But I had to change pretty quickly because I was like, boy, I even felt slimy. I was like, ooh, that's kind of, after I woke up to it. But you're right. And it's obvious now to me. I go, no, okay. You just don't know who you talk to. You don't know my network. See, that's the
Hmm.
thing. The power of your network. Now, Fred Smith wrote a book from FedEx, The Power of Your Network. Fabulous book to read. And by the way, I want to throw out some other books along the
Yeah.
way to help
Yeah,
people.
absolutely.
But I do want to just hit that point with, yes, you don't know. Like, my wife always compliments. She goes, how do you know these people? And I go, I built the relationship.
Yeah.
When you come and look at my phone, and this is just because I learned to love people. I mean, presidents of universities,
Hmm.
multi-billionaires. I have their cell phone numbers. I text them, they text me back. I go, oh, how did I get here? Because I didn't want anything from them. Key point. I wanted to be a friend to them first because I'm the little guy. I'm still the little guy. So I kind of knew, when you're dealing with people that worth hundreds of millions and billions of dollars for all you business people, and my company wasn't worth $100 million, but I sold it to a public company for a nice profit, and it's a whole big deal. But if it was worth 100 million, I may have been somewhere else right now. But the point is, I had to show I was true before they let me into their circle, right? We all have our inner circle of people we trust. Well, I wanted to be around people who would pull me up without me draining them, right? Just, man, how does he thinks differently? How does he have, whoa, I mean, the one guy, the president of the university, has a network that, you know, that you can't, your mind can't fathom, they don't, one guy just donated 8 figures to help them build a building, 8 figures donated
Hmm.
to build a school of entrepreneurship. And I was like, woo, I want to do that too. But, so, but I endeared myself to them by showing that I am real. I may be outgoing and goofy and happy and that's fine. But I was true to them, not violating anything, not saying, oh, I got you. None of that stuff. Just, how do I help you? Send cards during holidays. I do that. These guys are all on my holiday card list. I send certain people candy or licorice or a book. Just, I'm thinking about them. I read in the book and I go, oh, Kevin would like this. I order it, ship it to him. You can order on Amazon, have it delivered. Text, I got a book coming for you. People,
Yeah.
some of the cops, the commander, send them books all the time on leadership. So I'm going crazy here, but I want people to know networking is about serving that other person and building that relationship.
It's something interesting that you said, excuse me, when that that you're asking these people, you're just trying to be buddies with them, right? And
Right.
then if you notice, if somebody's trying to be your friend, right, and you're like, okay, I guess I guess I suppose I'll give this guy a chance, right? And then as soon, even if you open up to them and you're like, okay, he seems okay, right? But as soon as there is like an ask, then all of a sudden, right, all of that they have done is just kind of, it just gets undone, right? Like it's like they did all that and it was pointless because at the end of the day, like you're just like, oh, so that's the reason why you were nice to me all that time, is because you're, trying to get me to sign up for whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah. And that's a good point. And with these guys, I got to the point where they go, hey, if you ever need anything, you let me know. That's when you kind of made that connection. Hey, Lou, I appreciate you, staying in touch. If you ever need anything, you let me know. And that means, hey, man, can I get your advice on this? Not a sale. none of these guys have I made sales to.
Yep.
Maybe one after 10 years. You know what I mean? But they were just good advisors, good counselor in my life, just kind of a star in the distance to go, man, what would he do kind of situation because of business or, things like that. So you're right. It's not like, hey, man, how you doing? And yeah, I got 6 kids and we're doing great and blah, blah, blah. What about you?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, cool. And then, hey, man, you want to buy my insurance? You're like, oh, that's gross, So,
Yeah.
um,
I'd say be careful about that, just to go off of what you just said, because you're saying you haven't sold them. Networking isn't about, going back to that previous example, finding every lead in the room. It's about how can you help other people and how can they help you. There was a saying I heard, I don't know who said this, Lou, you might know, but you've got enough people in your life, the 40 people that you see regularly, that's enough people to know to make all the money in the world that you need to make, because all those people know other people. So just it's
right.
about connecting to people authentically, and we're not. I've used the phrase collecting people. It sounds bad, but you're just collecting people in your life. You're just getting to know more people, and
Mm-hmm.
you've got something valuable to offer. And networking becomes a lot easier when you just approach it that way. So I'm saying that for anybody listening to Lou here, who's obviously a veteran, but keep in mind you have to start somewhere to become a veteran someday. So this kind of stuff should make you feel, you know, little less daunting, about networking and getting started and going into a room. You need to value what you offer, and approach it in a way that's not salesy. It's more relational. And I think that's the Lou Samara method from what I've gathered on this call. But
Yeah.
Yeah, to add to what Ty just said, actually just so happened I was literally listening to a podcast. Might have been today actually, and so this is what the guy said. It's if you help others get what they want, you will eventually get what you want. And I was like, that's
Mm-hmm.
pretty good. I was like,
Yeah,
I
we
gotta
have
actually write that one down.
to write that down. That's a Zig Ziglar saying, by the way. Zig said that. Yeah. Um, I want to throw out some books real quick to help
Yeah,
people get
absolutely.
these skills down. So we talked about how to win friends and influence people. The other one is Magic of Thinking Big. Another one is Think and Grow Rich. So Magic of Thinking Big is Dr. David Schwartz. Think and Grow Rich is Napoleon Hill. That is an all-time classic, and he has his Napoleon Hill Foundation is still going, and they're releasing books all the time that they find in archives from Napoleon Hill. And if you don't know his story, that would be brilliant, because he, for 20 years, without pay, studied the wealthiest and the poorest people in the country of his time, starting with Andrew Carnegie, the steel magnate. And it'd be great. It's great for people to read and study that. I've studied it for years. And then the other one, that's a very long title that I just read probably within 10 years. The other ones I've been reading over 20. It's called How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success in Selling by Frank Bettger, Bettger. How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success in Selling. That one, unbelievable. For anybody who wants to sell anything, he was an insurance salesman, and he just tells you what he had to do to kind of build up, become a veteran in sales. And it's brilliant. He just talks about same thing, endearing himself to people, building that trust, and then, but you need this. No, I don't. And the way he's very creative. And I think it's a great book for people, download it on Audible. I don't, wherever, just get it. And I think for us, we all want sales. We all want to make money. We want to be able to do what we want with our money. We have to be able to serve the other person and know that, like Ty said, if you help enough people, well, I'm sorry, Dimitri said that, yeah, you will, be successful. So, I don't know. I mean,
yeah,
there's tons to talk about, but I think those are good basics for people, and to start that ball rolling. And it's not always about us. When I'm in there, yes, I do like to talk about myself. I'm doing it now, 40 minutes, right? But, we're doing this specifically to draw out some information. But in a networking event or somewhere else, got to listen to other people.
yeah,
Someone once told me, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And I went, okay.
yeah. Well,
I love it.
Dimitri, do you think that's a good place to end it? You want me to do some
Yeah,
outro
that
comments?
sounds good. Lou, tell us a little bit, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach you?
Um, well, I'm good here. I'm pretty open. People want to call me, I'll give you my cell phone number. It's fine. They can text me or call. Just leave a message because if I don't know you, I'm not answering, right? But I mean, that is easy for me, text or call. Or my Instagram is lou.samara, and it's lou.samara. You can private message me there, direct message me. Or, I mean, look, I get spam calls all the time, and I know they're spam because they don't leave a voicemail. So I don't mind people calling. It's 973 I do email, but I get so many, I just, so
Lou's about to get put
Instagram or
on the
text.
national spam list.
But it's already on it, man. It's already on it.
Like, do
You don't
your
want to know.
worst.
I get people all the time. You want to sell your house? I'm like, which one? No, thank you. So I don't even answer. So, but yeah, I look, you
Awesome.
have a good group of people, and I would say that if I could offer something, sometimes it's just encouragement. Like these networking groups, or sometimes it's just a little
Yeah,
encouragement to help you get to that next step.
I
yeah.
love it, Lou.
Well, guys,
Thank you
I
so
I,
much.
uh, I appreciate your time, Lou. I appreciate your wisdom and your authenticity and just your candor and your experience. And you are a student of the craft. You are
Thank you.
authentic and you enjoy people. And it's always good to have people like you in our lives who encourage us in sales and business development. So we appreciate you taking the time to come on the show today and share your experience. And if you've made it this far, you're still watching with us, we appreciate you watching, and I hope you got something out of this today. It's a little deviation from our typical talk about technology, like I said at the beginning, but these are the basics of networking and business development, things that we don't want to forget. This is all people business, no matter
Mm.
what you're in. And so for Brews with Bros podcast, again, my name is Ty Keller with Cross Country Mortgage, my co-host Dmitry Teplinsky with Alpha CIS, and our special guest, Lou Samara. We appreciate you watching, and tune into the next one. See you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Great job, guys. Great job.